layer. You're going to use the brush tool again, but I want this to look different than your Warhol #1. So I want you to use a different looking brush tool. I want you to use different colors than you did for Warhol #1. And then I want you to add shape into this one, okay? So whatever that means to you, as I scroll through here, you can see there's lots of different variations of what that means. Some people added shape into their background. Some people added shape into their faces. Some people used the brush tool to kind of do more creative things. Some people used the brush tool to create their own shapes. You can kind of see a good variety here. People have used the opacity tool, added other things into their images. It's really kind of up to you what you want to do for this. But I want this to, the main idea is that this looks different than your first portrait. So do not use the same brush tool. Do not use the same type of drawing that you did for the first one. This needs to be different. This is where I start to see the creativity or the non-creativity from people, okay? This is where you have to decide what this is going to look like. Some of your personality should shine through with this particular portrait. Okay, so I think I started one last week. I'm just going to open up my Photoshop here and just kind of guide you through it really quickly. So here we go. I've got my Warhol from last week. Let's see if I can open it. We're going to do this all in one document. It just makes our lives a little bit easier. Okay, so this is what I had last week. I had the start of my drawing where I was using the paint bucket tool to fill in. That was as far as I got. And then I also gave you like a different kind of drawing with some filled in color. So these are your kind of your options for Warhol #1. Notice how I locked those layers here and I hit the eyeballs just to temporarily hide them. They're still there for me to click on when it's time to print. Like I can still bring those forward. They're just hidden for right now so that I can work on my portrait #2. So these are all going to be in the same layers panel. This is where labeling is going to be really key. You want to make sure that your labels are correct and your stacking order is how you want it, just to keep your life a little bit more organized. So I have mine labeled brush tool 1, okay, fill in color 1, and then I've got my brush tool drawing 1. So these are all representations of my Warhol #1. I have 2 different types because I'm doing demos for people to show them different ways of doing it. You probably only have 1 or 2 layers here. Okay, then I hid those layers. I've got my original, and then I started doing my brush tool 2. So this is going to be my drawing for my second Warhol portrait. Now you have a couple different options for this one. You guys can keep that original picture showing throughout this portrait if you want. Or if I want to fill everything in, I can eventually hide that and just have my line work. I'm going to leave that up to you. So again, just to reiterate, you want to use a different type of brush. So if I zoom in, you can see that I've got this kind of like chalk brush going on. It's very textural, very different from my brush previously that I used. Okay, I use kind of more of like just a regular plain brush for my Warhol 1. Okay, so I'm using a different type of brush tool. Notice the colors. Okay, my first Warhol portrait, first one I did was in black and white. The second one I did was kind of more realistic coloring. I didn't finish it yet. And then the one that I'm doing now, my Warhol #2, I am using a totally different brush tool, different colors, and it's going to just look very different from my first one. You can use different types of brushes. You can use different colors. They don't have to be all the same. So here I am using kind of like a magenta for the hair, like a teal for the eyes. I'm going to kind of do like some different colors for the nose and the features for the shirt, just to make it look different. shape-wise, I have to determine how I want to do that. I'm just going to talk about the shapes for a few minutes here. I'm going to use the custom shape tool. When I click on that in my options panel, I can see all of my different types of shapes here. Now, we learned a little bit about the artist Andy Warhol. Some of these shapes aren't really going to necessarily work with him. So like some of these organic shapes, not really kind of his style. So I want to pick shapes that are going to kind of work with this composition and work with him as an artist. So maybe I'll take like this kind of shape here. Your color is going to come from the top up here, where the color your shape is going to be. So let's say I wanted to do a green shape here. So when I click and draw this shape, if you remember from when we did shapes 1, 2, and 3, if you hold shift, it makes that shape proportional. Okay. Let's say I want to make this shape, but I want it over on the right-hand side. I can hold my space bar and shift at the same time, and I can move this shape wherever I want to by holding the space bar. So I still have this selected with my mouse. And once I let go of my mouse, then it like actually makes that shape. And I can use my move tool and I can move this around. If you want to rotate this shape, Control T, hover over the corner anchor and you can rotate. Enter to keep that rotation. And then remember, you can go to Edit, Transform, and you can flip these shapes so that you can do different things with them. You'll also remember that your shapes go in their own layers over here. So if I do a ton of these shapes, so I'm holding my Alt key, I have my Move tool selected, and if I hold Alt, it turns to a double arrow. So I can ultimately duplicate this shape a bunch of times, okay? And you'll see that I have 4 layers here in my Layers panel. It's gonna get kind of confusing. So I think I can select all of these shapes. Yes, okay. I just kind of wanted to test that out. So this is starting to look pretty confusing because I've got all these layers going on here. You can merge these shapes together so that it's not as confusing. Now, before I do that, I think I'm just going to lower my opacity a little bit because that looks a little kind of crazy. So to select all of my shapes, I'm just going to click on my bottommost shape, and I'm going to hold Shift, and I'm going to click on my topmost shape, and then I can right-click in that kind of grayed out area here, and there's a spot where it says Merge Shapes. And look at that. It put all of my shapes in one layer so that it's a lot more organized. And I can just label this Shapes 2. Then I've got my brush tool drawing 2, my shapes 2. When it comes time to start printing these portraits, I can hide those layers. I can bring my Warhol 1 forward, print that. I can bring my Warhol 2 forward, print that. So you get the idea. Keeping these layers organized is going to really save you a lot of time and effort in the end. This is legit how graphic designers work. So by learning these layering tools, it's going to make your life easier. And if this is something you want to do professionally down the road, you're going to have to use your layers. That's like the biggest benefit of using computers to make art is you're able to do these kinds of things with just a click of the mouse. Okay, so moral of the story, Warhol 1 needs to look different than Warhol 2. This is where the creativity comes in. Don't call me over and ask me what you're supposed to do because there's no right answer. This isn't math. 1 + 1 = 2 in math. There's no right answer. You just have to figure it out and you have to do it. You have to try new things. You have to be creative. You have to think differently. So that's kind of where we're going to start separating people, the people who have a little taste of creativity and those who have never done this before. But trust me, you are all very capable of this. You can make this happen.